Welcome back, radio entrepreneurs, listeners, and fans. I'm producer Nathan Gobes. Excited to introduce another guest to our show. But first, let me introduce my co-host, John Dustin of JED Insurance. Welcome back, John.
Nathan, happy to be here and excited. This looks like a great segment.
I thought you might like this one. For those that don't know, John is a power lifter outside of dealing in the insurance space. And so we're both excited to introduce the next guest. Dr. Ed Berry, founder and CEO of BAACK2. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you, John. I appreciate the invitation.
Great to have you here. So why don't you start by telling our listeners about BAACK2 and about your product Lift, and we'll get into all our questions after that. So I'm sure we have a good number.
With pleasure, thank you. BAACK2 is a company that I founded about 2.5-3 years ago, based on an innovative device that I had been working on for quite some time while I was in active practice as a chiropractic physician. Most of the conditions that I treated revolved around exceptionally chronic and acute low back problems. And during my chiropractic career, I searched for the best treatment protocols to treat conditions like that. And it turns out that most of the problems that people acquire as far as the low back is concerned are related to the discs, what we call the intervertebral discs. Those are the shock absorbers in between the individual vertebrae. And they take particular abuse in the lumbar spine. So a lot of the conditions that I was seeing at that time were related to that area of the spine. And a particular treatment protocol that I adopted early on involved the passive movement of a combination of what we call flexion and distraction on a specialized table that seemed to work very, very well for patients. They were able to tolerate it very well, and they improved with exceptional speed, even the most severe and chronic and painful conditions. And I use this technique constantly in my practice with great success, and the outcomes were very, very favorable. And over the years, I began to look for a way to try to reproduce this by way of a device that could be used at home, where patients who had suffered from back pain could reinforce their treatment without the expense of having to have repetitive doctor's visits. And that also could be used by people who were desirous of avoiding severe debilitating back problems, because back pain is probably one of the top reasons why people go to the doctors in the first place. And it has now become the #1 reason why doctors prescribe opioid medications. So there's a very, very keen desire on the part of patients to have a method that they can use to avoid this. And I felt that this would also be good for younger patients desirous of who are in the active part of their the years to avoid these problems as they get older, so they could maintain the ability to be able to do the things that they enjoy doing later on in life. And that's really a key thing. So this device, after many iterations, many meetings with different engineers, we have very, very good prototypes that we're ready to put into production. And we've tested it with a number of patients and folks who have suffered from back pain, and there's a tremendous positive response to this. And I think it's going to revolutionize the way people are able to care for these issues in the comfort of their own home over the long haul. I also think that physicians will be able to use this in their offices as a kind of modality that they can use in preparation for the treatments that they do in office. And that should be a very, very helpful thing for physicians that are looking for a standalone treatment to enhance the improvement in the outcomes that they get with respect to the treatment protocols that they use in their offices. But the big thing is the democratization of healthcare with one of the #1 problems that people experience today, which is low back pain.
And Ed, the back is so mechanical, you know, as chiropractors actually gained recognition, because I think what you we do a lot of workers' comp here and liability claims around the back. And I think what you said, and it kind of hit home to me, is they don't diagnose the problem. They diagnose the symptom and they give medication without
That
really.
that's exactly right, John. The typical protocol for if a patient goes in to see their physician, their primary care physician, is that they will get medication, sometimes non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and then if it's more serious and prolonged, possibly and more than likely opioid medications. And then they're sent for active care with a physical therapist. And if that doesn't work, then they get a surgical consult. So there's not as much understanding of these issues, these mechanical problems, as you so appropriately stated, into developing conservative treatment methods to solve those problems. And that's what we as chiropractors really specialized in, solving these mechanical problems with very conservative methods, such as the protocols that I used involving flexion and distraction in the office. And now through this device, the lift.
So if you,
go ahead.
I was hoping you could actually explain the device a little more, because I know from taking a look at the website, and of course there'll be a link on our website to BAACK2's website. But if you could explain the device, because we're not talking about just a standard foam roller here or anything like that.
Oh, sure. No. This is a little bit different. A lot of people are familiar with gravity inversion, where they hang upside down. And that is a form of traction, and it's very prevalent. A lot of people have used that. But what we found is that hanging upside down is not really an option for older patients like myself, the older demographic, who are the primary folks who experience these types of problems. So we wanted to design something that would be more dynamic, because when you're hanging upside down, it's very much a static position. And that's what the lift was designed to do. When you lay on this and you place your knees up on this knee bolster and you pull the handles down, the engineers helped me design this device with what we call a center link. And that's really the key to the way this thing operates. When you pull the handles down, the center link raises the knee bolsters on the carriage arm. And the way your hips are positioned, it lifts the legs and the hips up while it simultaneously flexes the lower back. So you're getting two dynamic movements, traction and flexion of the lower back. And these happen to be the critical movements that help to kind of resuscitate that very flexible entity in between your vertebrae, the disc. And the reason why that's important for people who suffer from low back pain is that studies have shown that most of the problems that people suffer in the low back are related to the disc. And the reason for that is the disc, as we become older in age, about our mid-30s and beyond, which was once a very well vascularized structure, very malleable, with a good oxygenated blood supply being brought in. As we age, that circulation kind of withers away, and we're left with an unvascularized tissue, and you need to get movement in order to get that blood back in there. And that's exactly what lift does. The opening and closing of those vertebrae through this dynamic combination of movements allows more blood to come from the vertebrae, where the marrow and the blood is, into the disc, and it helps to nourish the disc, creates faster healing, and preserves the disc over the long haul. And that's what we were looking for.
Nathan, I was going to ask, Ed, related to your question, has the health insurance community adopted contribution to this? Where are you with that process?
well, we as far as doctors are concerned, there is reimbursement through most commercial insurances for traction modality. It's very nominal, but if doctors were to use this in their office, yes, they could be reimbursed for it. As far as durable medical equipment, you have to go through a certification process, which we are going to be doing in order to have this approved by Medicare, so that doctors could actually prescribe something like this for their patients so they could use at home. So that is one of the avenues that we're pursuing. Traction still by most insurance carriers is considered to be an investigational experimental type of modality, which, you know, as you know, John, in the insurance industry, it means that they really don't want to pay for it, but they will under certain circumstances. So yeah, that's where we're going. But we intend to make this device very affordable for the average person, so that they will have an option. And there's a portable device that the engineers are working on right now, where people will be able to afford to have this in their home at a very, very nominal expense and use it on a daily basis. So that's what one of our goals was.
And really, the bigger goal would be potentially to avoid medication and addiction and use a holistic approach to fixing what the real problem is. I would think.
Absolutely, no question. And also to avoid surgery, because surgery, the statistics on surgery are getting slimmer and slimmer. And the estimates are now that is less than 5% of these chronic cases are really candidates for surgery. And it's a very, very dicey proposition for patients. And I've known patients of mine who have had surgery out of desperation. And the outcomes are generally, the good outcomes that occur are definitely in the minority in most cases.
That's tough. So you were touching on it a little bit, but what kind of trajectory timeline do you think your product is in terms of going to market and things like that?
Currently, we have manufacturers lined up, and we're getting some quotes. And we are also developing a website, which will be a little bit different than the website we currently have, because in conjunction with distribution of the product, we are developing a digital community, a digital forum where patients can go on there and get advice, a myriad of ideas and advice on how to deal with back issues. So we'll have experts, panel experts like a Pilates instructor, chiropractors, physicians, meditation, and also yoga, that patients will be able to avail themselves of when they go on there. And they'll be able to be introduced to the device Lift and have the option of purchasing that. So that's in the works too. And we think that the combination of the device and the digital forum and the digital community is going to be an important aspect. So we hope to have all this up and running by the summer of next year.
Exciting. Our guest has been Ed Berry, founder and CEO of BAACK2. It's BAACK, the number 2. Ed, if people want to find out more about the product, about your work, how can they do so?
They can log on to the website, our current website, and they can shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to get back to them. There on that website, they'll see a nice little video that we produced that explains how Lift works. And that video actually won an award by the company that did it, Make Films, up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So we're pretty excited about that. And they'll be able to get a little bit more information about how the device works and what the intentions are.
Great. And of course, my co-host, John Dustin, JED Insurance. If people have insurance questions or powerlifting questions, perhaps, what's the best way to reach you?
I'd probably stick to the risk management. 508-543-1067. Web www.jedinsurance.com, or if you wish to email john.dustin, D-U-S-T-I-N, at jedinsurance.com.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Ed, and of course, John. Thank you both for joining us this morning. We'll be back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs after this break.